We continue with an overview of the Shri Sharada Sahasranama Puja and its performance during Navaratri as outlined in the Sharada Sahasranama. This will include the specifications for her most sacred ritual revealed here for the first time. And we'll begin here with the convocational section of the Sahasranama that immediately follows the recitation of the 1,000 names, after which in the appendix we get the specifications for when and how the ritual is to be performed. Om iti Shri Sharada Nam Sahasram Bhairavoditam Guhyam Mantratmakam Punyam Sarvaswam Tri Divaukasam Yapaket Patayet Vapi Shrinati Shravayet Api Divaratrau Chasandhyayam Prabhate Chasada Pumam. Om Bhairava has taught the 1,000 names of Shri Sharada, including her retinue of auspicious mantras that are unknown to all of the gods. The one who recites as well as the one who receives the recitation, and the one who teaches as well as the one who is taught, is the eternal spirit of Sharada, who manifests on the auspicious juncture of that divine night, that Diva Ratrau. So we have indicated a juncture on a divine night in which the Sahasranama ritual is to be performed. So the sacred night of the goddess, when and how the Shri Sharada Sahasranama is to be performed. And hence this section now begins the appendix of the scroll of the Sahasranama. Ashtamyam Ashwamase tu Madhyane Murti Samidao. On the 8th day in the month of Ashwin, and at midday the presence of the goddess is invoked into the Murti via her seed mantras. So this is of course the Pratishta, the installation of the goddess into her Murti, which is done hours before the actual ceremony commences. So this brings the presence of the goddess ritually into the community, into the Murti. The living power enters the subtle body of the officiant, and in this sense it is the divine power that is actually conducting the ritual in the form of the guru, the acharya, who paradoxically is performing the worship to herself. So this is a non-dual performance in which divinity recognizes its own divinity in a communal, celebratory recitation of the 1,000 names of Goddess Sharada. So the Homa officially begins. O daughter of Parvata, Bhairava says, the wise sadhaka, whose home is the 4 directions, is to recite the 1,000 names precisely at dusk on the 8th day, accompanied with kumkum powder, the fragrance of red sandalwood, camphor, etc. And there's a whole list of the incidentals that accompany the ritual. So here we have the actual moment prescribed for when the Homa is to commence, hours after the goddess has been installed into her Murti. The month of Ashwin. So, just to clarify in terms of this year in particular, the month of Ashwin in the Hindu calendar begins on the first day of the waxing moon in the month of October in the Western calendar. So this year, the first day of the waxing moon, the day after Amavasya, the moonless sky or the new moon, the first day is October 5th. This is when the festival of Navaratri commences, the 9 nights of the goddess. So night number 1 will be the night of October 5th. And the preliminary rites, including the Pratishta of the goddess we just heard about, and other preliminary rites that we saw in the last session briefly, in which the Rishi and his Shakti are invested with the power of the goddess and become conduits for the goddess to perform this ritual. These preliminary rites begin at noon on the 8th day, so this of course will be October 12th in the Western calendar for 2013. Hours later, the recitation home itself of Sharada's 1,000 names officially begins precisely at, quote, dusk on the 8th day, or in this case, this year, the 12th of October. So this transition at dusk on the 8th day of Navaratri marks the Sandhya, or the specific juncture within the middle of the final 3 nights of the Navaratri celebration. That is to say, the 3 nights in which Goddess Saraswati, aka Goddess Sharada, is venerated. Samkranta grahane vapi bhakten mantri nadi takke sabhavet sarva shastrangyo veda vedanta tattvavit sharadhaya dam nam sahasram mantra garbhaka ashtamyam cha navamyam cha chaturdashyam shaner dine samkranta mangale ratrau yor chayit charadam sudihi. So a bit more on the specifics for performing the Sahasranama ritual. Bhairava says, O goddess, when the transition into dusk occurs, the master of mantra, the knower of all scripture, who comprehends the essence of Vedanta and the Vedas, is to recite the Sahasranama to Sharada. The wise one is to perform the ceremony to Sharada on the auspicious night, marking the passage between the 8th and 9th day, that is to say of the month of Ashwin, or the culmination of Navaratri, as we've seen, and on the 14th day of the month of Ashwin, that of Saturn, or Saturday. Now, of course, the 14th day is the next to last day of the waxing phase of the moon, and we are therefore giving clear instructions that the Sahasranama is to be performed twice within a matter of days, at the culmination of Navaratri and thereafter before the moon begins to wane back into darkness again in the fall season. So this is clearly specified in the text that the only 2 times of the year, to recap, that the Sahasranama can be performed is at the culmination of Navaratri and again a few days later. Now, the Sharada Sahasranama, the highest ritual of the worship of Sharada, as we know, has been lost. So what is performed on Navaratri? The date designated, the festival designated in our text for the performance of the Sharada Sahasranama. What has been, what is performed now during this most sacred celebration of the goddess Sharada? We take a look at excerpts from the website of the Shringeri community in Karnataka, and we see the following information. Quote, the most important festival for that community is the Sharada Navaratri. During the 9 days of Navaratri, the entire temple complex is decorated. His Holiness, that is to say, Shri Jagadguru Mahaswami, gives darshan in his durbar costumes only during these days. During durbar, His Holiness will be seated in a special simhasana. It is a divine pitam, where His Holiness sits and represents Goddess Sharadamba, end quote. Now, we've already seen that in the prescriptions given for the Guru to perform, for the Acharya, the Rishi, to perform the ceremony of the Sahasranama, of course, it is necessary to receive the avesha, the immersion of the goddess power within his own body, ritually as a preliminary rite before the Sahasranama is performed. And so it seems not to be a coincidence that the great Guru, the Jagat Guru now of the Shringeri community, who worships Sharada during the proper time, and the highest ceremony of Sharada during Navaratri also is considered to be a representative, literally imbued with the power of Goddess Sharadamba. We're also told that the Acharya will give darshan to the devotees between 5:30 and 6:30 p.m., meaning to say during the nights of Navaratri, and he attends the Sri Sharadamba Ratotsava, the chariot festival, at 6:30 p.m. After the Ratotsava, the Acharya will take his seat on the golden throne, which is kept facing towards the Murti of Sharadamba, end quote. We're then told that after the Ratotsava, which concludes around 7:30 p.m., which happens to be the time of dusk, roughly, at that time of the year. So this is exactly the juncture now that aligns with when we are taught in the Sahasranama scroll that the ritual, the recitation of the 1,000 names of Sri Sharada is to commence. So just want to make that point. At this point in the daily festival or festivities of Navaratri, we're told that the Acharya will take his seat on the golden throne, which is kept facing the Murti of Mother Sharada, Sharadamba. He attends the Sri Chandra Moleshwara Puja at 8 p.m. This puja ends at around 9:30 p.m. Then the Acharya will preside darbar or court. And at the conclusion of this, the culminating moment of the evening, the chanting of one or two chapters of the Saptashati will be done by the head Acharya, Jagadguru. So the Saptashati, sometimes known as the Saptashata, the 700 verses to Durga, referring to her 700 names, gives an outline for the worship of Sharada, but not the details. What does it say about Sharada? Sharada, a tantric goddess, is referred to reverentially, but as a subordinate expression of Durga, a non-tantric goddess. States that for Navaratri, one has the option to worship Sharada to experience the benefits of what it calls the Kali Kula, the tantric lineage of Kashmir that we'll refer back to in a moment, versus the rewards of the Vedic scriptures for reciting Durga's 700 names. Specifically, the Saptashati differentiates the Shakta or tantric ritual for Sharada as the recitation of her 1,000 names versus the Durga option, that is to say, of reciting the 700 names of Durga. The key is, no rites to Sharada are detailed anywhere in the Saptashati. It does give reverence to Sharada, and so those sections have been excerpted for worship of Sharada on Navaratri. And this is why the Saptashati is currently in use as a ritual text, but it doesn't actually give any rites to Sharada. Its concern mainly is with Durga. It only refers to Sharada obliquely. So where are the rites found for Sharada Navaratri worship, which are referenced by the Saptashati? The Saptashati states that the worship of Sharada's 1,000 names is performed on the 8th day of Navaratri. A commentator on Saptashati refers to a single, quote, scripture on Sharada, a Sharadagama, used for Navaratri that, quote, is auspicious in the Kashmir tradition. Kashmiri, Saiva Shobhana. Our Sharada Sahasranama, composed in Kashmir, the text now recently discovered, is the only known scripture specifically for the worship of Sharada on Navaratri. So continuing on, the same Saptashati passage just referred to lists incidental benefits, naimittika, that come from worshipping Sharada during the last days of Navaratri. These incidental benefits are also found in the Sharada Sahasranama, I've discovered. Then the Saptashati references Sharada rituals for spring and other times of the year, not the Sahasranama, but other Sharada rituals, demonstrating that other texts on Sharada exist. And as I mentioned in our first session, other Sharada stotras and other ritual texts, such as the Mahatmya of Sharada, are known to exist still in Kashmir, and it is a target of our preservation project, our manuscript preservation project, to attain these on our next trip to Kashmir. So all of this confirms that the Saptashati is referring to the Sharada Sahasranama for the worship of Sharada Devi during the festival of Navaratri, in exact alignment with the prescriptions given in our Sharada Sahasranama.